Hey, where do you think you're going, princess? The voice cut through the chatter of the crowded college hallway like a knife. Dozens of students turned toward the sound, their conversations dying instantly. In the center of the hallway, three tall boys stood shoulder to shoulder, blocking the path of a girl no one had seen before. Her name was Aria. She had arrived on campus that very morning, carrying nothing but a worn-out backpack and a few neatly stacked textbooks. Her long black hair fell across her shoulders like a curtain, and her bright, steady eyes didn't waver despite the attention now locked on her. Something about her aura, the way she walked, the calmness in her stride, made students whisper as soon as she appeared. She wasn't just new. She carried herself like she didn't need to prove anything to anyone. Unfortunately, that was exactly the type of person Brad and his crew loved to target. Brad was the self-declared king of the halls, a cocky upperclassman who lived for attention. Everyone knew his type: rich parents, expensive clothes, and a need to make weaker students feel small. His two friends, Kyle and Jason, laughed at everything he said, like trained backup singers in his daily show of cruelty. Brad stepped forward, smirking. Without hesitation, he reached out and grabbed Aria's wrist tightly, squeezing just enough to make a point. "If you're gonna survive here," Brad said, loud enough for the hallway to hear, "you better learn the rules." He smirked wider, raising his voice into a mocking tone. "And the first rule? You hold our hands when we say so." "Got it." A few students laughed nervously. Others just looked away, pretending to be busy with their lockers. This wasn't new. Brad had humiliated dozens of students before, and nobody ever stopped him. But Aria didn't laugh. She didn't beg. She didn't even look scared. Instead, she met his eyes with a calm, unshakable stare. Her voice, when it came, was soft, but carried a power that made the hallway quiet down. "Let go." The simplicity of her words startled everyone. Brad's smirk faltered for a split second. He wasn't used to resistance, especially not from someone who looked as delicate as her. "Or what?" he sneered, tightening his grip. He expected her to flinch, maybe even cry. That was the usual script. But Aria didn't flinch. She didn't even move. She just stood there, calm as stone, like she already knew something Brad didn't. Nobody realized it yet, but the next few seconds would turn this ordinary morning into a story that would echo across the entire campus for weeks. The hallway went dead silent. You could almost hear the hum of the fluorescent lights above as every eye focused on Aria and Brad. It was like time slowed down, everyone waiting to see whether this new girl would crack under the pressure, or whether Brad would take things too far. Aria tilted her head slightly, as though she was studying him. Not with fear, not with panic, but with curiosity. Her gaze wasn't the kind that begged for mercy. It was the kind that made Brad feel like he was the one being examined. The confidence unsettled him, though he tried not to show it. Then, with a movement so quick most people missed it, Aria twisted her wrist. It wasn't a wild pull or a desperate struggle. It was precise, efficient, almost like she had done it 1,000 times before. Brad's grip slipped instantly, and his hand opened against his will. He stumbled backward, shocked, his eyes wide. Gasps rippled through the hallway. Nobody had ever seen someone break free from Brad like that. Not so easily, not so smoothly. "You think you're tough, huh?" Kyle growled. He wasn't about to let his leader lose face. Stepping forward, he snatched at Aria's other hand, yanking it toward him with far more force than Brad had used. But again, Aria didn't resist wildly. She didn't even look rattled. Instead, she moved with an elegance that looked more like a dance than a struggle. She shifted her grip, angled her wrist, and twisted Kyle's fingers back in one controlled motion. The result was instant. Kyle dropped to his knees with a cry of pain, clutching his hand. His face twisted red as he tried to hide the tears that stung his eyes. The hallway erupted. Students gasped, some shouted, and several phones whipped up instantly, recording the moment. Nobody wanted to miss this. Jason, the third bully, stepped forward quickly. "Stop playing with me," he barked, his voice cracking slightly. He was trying to sound intimidating, but the fear creeping into his tone betrayed him. Aria let go of Kyle, who recoiled to the side, nursing his injured fingers. She straightened her shirt casually, like she had just brushed off a speck of dust. Her voice was calm when she spoke, but it carried like a blade through the murmurs of the crowd. "I don't grab hands," she said softly, "especially not dirty ones." The hallway exploded with whispers. Some students laughed nervously, others clapped under their breath, and many just stared with wide eyes. Nobody had ever stood up to Brad's crew like this, let alone turn the tables on them in front of the entire college. And the strangest part? Aria hadn't even broken a sweat. Brad's jaw clenched. His pride was bleeding, and the humiliation stung worse than any physical pain. His crew, his image, his dominance, was slipping through his fingers in front of everyone. But Aria wasn't finished yet. Brad's face burned red, the kind of red that comes from rage and humiliation mixing into one. His friends looked shaken, clutching their sore hands and avoiding eye contact, but Brad wasn't about to let the new girl walk away with the last word. Not here. Not in his hallway. He lunged. With a roar of frustration, Brad grabbed both of Aria's wrists at once, his fingers digging into her skin as he tried to pin her. His size alone dwarfed her. By all logic, she should have been powerless against him. The crowd sucked in a collective breath, certain this was it. There was no way she could fight back against that kind of force. But then it happened. Aria shifted. It was so fast and fluid that the students closest to her couldn't even describe it afterward. She angled her body, dropped her weight slightly, and twisted. In an instant, Brad's strength was no longer an advantage. It was a liability. His momentum carried him forward, and with one clean move, Aria redirected his energy straight into the cold metal lockers. Bang! The sound echoed down the hallway as Brad slammed shoulder first into the lockers with a grunt of pain. The impact reverberated through the building, making students wince. "Whoa!" someone shouted, and suddenly the hallway filled with cheers. Dozens of phones were up now, recording every second. What started as whispers had turned into a full-on spectacle. Jason, panicked and furious, charged forward, throwing his arms out to grab her. But Aria didn't hesitate. She sidestepped, hooked his arm, and flipped him over her hip with the kind of precision you only saw in martial arts demonstrations. Jason hit the floor, rolling to the side, groaning in pain. Kyle, still cradling his sore hand, tried to recover his pride by lunging at her too. This time, Aria simply shifted her stance, caught his wrist, and twisted just enough to send him staggering back, yelping. He stumbled into the crowd, knocking a couple of bystanders aside. By now, the cheers had turned into outright shouts of disbelief. "No way. Did you see that? She took them all down." The bullies, the ones who had ruled the halls through intimidation and cruelty, were now the ones stumbling, clutching their arms, looking like lost little boys. Brad, breathing hard, pushed himself off the lockers. His pride was shattered, but his anger only grew. He glared at Aria with wild eyes, his chest heaving. "Who even are you?" he hissed, his voice laced with venom. Aria's eyes glimmered. She didn't raise her voice, didn't puff out her chest, didn't act like she needed to prove herself. She simply answered, calm and sharp. "Someone who doesn't tolerate cowards hiding behind strength." The words landed harder than her moves. The crowd erupted again, not just cheering, but laughing at the bullies, mocking them in ways they had mocked others for years. For the first time, Brad and his friends weren't feared. They were pitted. But Brad wasn't ready to admit defeat. Not yet. His pride screamed for one last chance to claw back control. What he didn't realize was that his time had already run out. Because at that very moment, heavy footsteps echoed from the end of the hallway. And then, enough! The booming voice silenced the chaos. Principal Harris had arrived. Enough! The single word boomed across the hallway like thunder. Every student froze, the shouts and laughter cut short. Even the ones with their phones out quickly lowered them, trying to look innocent. Principal Harris stood at the end of the hall, his tall frame commanding immediate authority. His sharp eyes swept the scene, the bullies looking disheveled and humiliated, Aria standing calm and composed, and dozens of students crowded around like they were watching a live show. "What is going on here?" His voice was stern, his footsteps echoing as he strode into the center of the chaos. Brad, clutching his sore wrist, wasted no time. "She attacked us," he said dramatically, pointing at Aria as though she were a criminal. His voice cracked with false pain. "We were just trying to welcome her. And she went crazy." Gasps fluttered through the crowd. Some students shook their heads in disbelief at the audacity of the lie, while others bit their lips nervously. They knew how things usually went. Brad lied, and people backed him up out of fear. But this time was different. Aria didn't flinch. She didn't shout or plead. She simply stood tall, her voice calm and steady when she spoke. "Sir," she said, "they grabbed me first. I only defended myself." Her words didn't need to be loud. The confidence in them carried all the weight. The silence stretched for a moment, until one brave student, a boy from the back of the crowd, stepped forward. His voice trembled, but he forced the words out. "She's telling the truth. We all saw it." The tension cracked. Another student spoke up, louder this time. "Yeah, they started it. She didn't do anything until they grabbed her." "Exactly," a girl added. "Brad's lying, like always." The murmurs turned into a chorus of agreement. One by one, students raised their voices, confirming what really happened. It wasn't just one witness, it was dozens. Brad's face paled. His friends shifted uncomfortably, realizing the tide had turned against them. Principal Harris's eyes narrowed as he looked at the three boys. He had known about their antics for a long time. Whispers of bullying, rumors of intimidation, but they had always managed to cover their tracks or scare others into silence. This time, though, their arrogance had gone too far. "Brad, Kyle, Jason." The principal's tone was ice. "My office. Now." The command snapped like a whip. The bullies' mouths opened, ready to protest, but the look in Principal Harris's eyes shut them down instantly. They had no ground to stand on. The students erupted in whispers again, but this time the sound was different. It wasn't fear. It was excitement. Relief. For the first time, it felt like justice might actually happen. Aria, still calm, lowered her gaze slightly and said nothing. She didn't need to. The truth was already written across every pair of eyes in the hallway. As the bullies sulked away toward the office, heads down, it became clear things would never be the same for them again. The hallway slowly emptied, but the whispers didn't stop. Even as students returned to their classrooms, the story spread like wildfire. Phones buzzed with videos already being shared in group chats. By the end of the day, everyone in the college would know about the new girl who had humbled Brad and his crew. Aria walked calmly through the lingering crowd, her steps steady, her expression unreadable. She didn't bask in the attention. She didn't brag or smile with triumph. She carried herself with the same quiet confidence she had from the start, as though nothing unusual had just happened. Several students hurried after her. "Hey, that was amazing," one girl said breathlessly. "You stood up to them like it was nothing." A boy nodded eagerly. "They've been terrorizing people for years, and you just shut them down. You don't even look scared." Another voice chimed in, half in awe, half in curiosity. "Where'd you learn to do that? Were you, trained or something?" Aria paused. For a moment, she seemed to consider her answer carefully. Then she gave a small smile, gentle but firm. "Don't thank me," she said softly. "Learn to stand up for yourselves. Power only works if people let it." The words landed heavy, deeper than any punch or throw could. Students exchanged glances, the message sinking in. For years, they had let Brad and his friends run wild, believing that silence was safer than resistance. But Aria's actions proved something they had forgotten. Bullies only have power when everyone else hands it to them. The group following her grew, not out of curiosity anymore, but out of admiration. They weren't just impressed by her strength, they were inspired by her courage. Meanwhile, in the principal's office, Brad, Kyle, and Jason sat slumped in their chairs, their bravado gone. For the first time, they were facing consequences they couldn't wiggle out of. Principal Harris wasn't in the mood for excuses. "I've had complaints about the three of you for years," he said sternly. "But this time, the evidence is clear. Videos, witnesses, and your own arrogance put you here. Consider this your final warning, because the next time, you're out." The boys shifted miserably, their pride crushed. The invincible image they had built was shattered beyond repair. By the end of the day, when they walked back through the halls, nobody moved out of their way anymore. Nobody laughed at their jokes or followed their lead. Instead, students whispered behind their backs, eyes flicking toward Aria with respect instead of fear. Aria didn't linger to watch. She walked forward, her head high, as though she had already left the moment behind. She didn't need recognition. She didn't crave glory. She simply lived by her principle: stand tall, no matter who tries to push you down. And that was enough. From that day forward, the story lived on in every corner of the college. The new girl who came in quietly, stood against the loudest bullies on her first day, and changed the balance of power with nothing but her calm strength and unshakable spirit. The bullies lost their crown. Aria earned respect no one could buy. And the lesson? Sometimes, the quietest voice carries the loudest echo.